Hello, Diana.
Hi, good to meet
Hi.
you.
I like your headphones. Bright,
Thank you.
very cool.
Thank you very much. I'm so
I finally
grateful.
get it. Insanity as in insanity.
Right, right. Yes,
Let's
that's
see
so
what
great.
you.
I'm following you for, I think, almost 2 years now. So since I had TikTok, I immediately found your account and I thought you're very inspiring. You have such a good vibe. You are like a really happy, inspiring, motivating. You have a really beautiful message that you share, or a bunch of them actually. And I really enjoy watching. And there's so much information and so much depth behind everything that I can really watch the videos even multiple times. So I'm really happy and grateful to have you here today.
Thank you for saying so. Right back at you. We only see in others what's there in us. So right back at you. Your vibe is immaculate, as they would say.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I thought I will explain a little bit what insanity is all about, just in a few sentences. Then I would like to know more about you, more about your path, more about what you're doing, your work, and then we just let the conversation flow and we just see where
Wonderful.
it goes. The average sane person is someone who is not necessarily happy, who isn't necessarily healthy, who isn't, well, who probably even is in debt and on medication. So that's like the average
Right.
person. I thought,
Yes.
okay, so if that's normal and if that's sane, so maybe insane is a better direction for me right now. And I would like to talk to people who are probably also a little bit different than the average person who took a little bit unconventional paths in life, who are inspiring, who are motivating for other people again. To probably listen a little bit more to themselves and to their heart and to be more authentic instead of listening to all the voices around them. And I thought I still give it a double meaning because sometimes we will have topics that are probably a little bit over the top. And sometimes people will say, hey, maybe you're insane. And maybe we are. It's just that I want to give us a safe space to talk about our experiences and to share our teachings. So, yeah.
Maybe we are. Oh, maybe we are
Well, maybe
actually.
we are. Hopefully, we are.
Yeah, hopefully. I like how you said, like, looking at what sanity looks like, I think insanity is a better direction for me. I like that line a lot.
Yes.
It's a better direction for me to be moving in. I think in the Bible it says wisdom with the world is foolishness with God, and foolishness with God is wisdom with the world. Oh, beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Yes.
upside down almost.
Yes, yes, it feels like, yeah. And then I stumbled across your content, and you are talking about all these beautiful spiritual teachings, sometimes even religious concepts. And I think you bring it together in such a beautiful way that I wanted to learn more about you and what inspires you. And you are often talking about Hinduism, and I don't know very much about this religion. Also, I did
Yeah,
my
me neither.
studies. Ah, okay, okay. But
We're in the same boat there, don't worry.
okay, okay. I thought maybe you have like a guru or maybe you're working with someone because you're sharing so much knowledge. So yeah, I just wanted to know what inspires you and how you started to create all your content and what drives you.
Yes, the most important thing to note is that in the late 1800s, there was a very important figure. His name was Ramakrishna.
Mhm.
Ramakrishna was a priest at a Kali temple just outside of Calcutta in a place called Dakshineshwar. And there, the central deity is Kali, but the temple there is very special because Kali, the goddess with the
Yes.
sword and the head, and she's the main goddess. So the main temple is devoted to Kali. But to her right, there is a Krishna temple, and there Krishna is worshipped with Radha, Krishna's
Hmm.
consort, and their god is the eternal playmate, the beloved, in that like romantic bhava, as you say, bhava as a devotional mood is there. Then there are 12 Shiva temples. And
Hmm.
that's actually kind of atypical because one thing you have to note is there's no thing called Hinduism, actually. Hinduism is a pretty modern word that is
Hmm.
used to bring together a series of different traditions, which each and every one of them, they have different theologies, different understandings of the universe, and they often don't really agree on
All
very
right.
like central principles like is God a person or like impersonal reality. So the
Yeah.
beauty of Hinduism is it's actually a few different religions all combined into one you know
Yeah. And one of them is, if I'm getting it right, is it the Vedic concept? Because I did read a few things about the Vedic yeah, beliefs and even the Bhagavad Bhagavad Gita. It's difficult for me to pronounce that, but I started reading this book, which is like a very big thing. But I
yes
started
yes
to make my way into it.
Yeah, see, because by Vedas, no books are meant. It's true. in ancient India, there is a series of 4 books compiled into 4. They're called the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda. These are called the Vedas. But
Yeah.
it's important to note that the Vedas are not really books. They're just the codification of spiritual laws that exist in the atmosphere that anybody anywhere can tap into. So it just so happened that in the dawn of Indian civilization, there were a group of sages. They're called rishis. Rishi just means someone who can hear, a saint or a prophet. And so the
Okay.
rishi sat in meditation and saw in their meditation these mantras, the spiritual laws that were in the atmosphere, and they codified them as the Vedas. One thing to note though is the Vedic worldview. It's mostly ritualistic. Like the Vedas are mostly about what rituals to perform, when to perform them, and why to perform them.
Okay.
So it's not, I think most people reading the Vedas will be like, what is this? It's just not at all relevant for today's climate or cultural context. But there's something about the Vedas that's very special. They're called Upanishads. Upanishads are a series of philosophical works that appear all over the place in the Vedas. And when you take the Upanishads together, the teachings of the Upanishads are called Vedanta. Vedanta means the essence of the Vedas or the central message of the Vedas.
Okay.
So
Okay,
that's one
that's
tradition,
interesting.
Vedanta.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the Gita, so this whole scripture with this
Yes.
long, long story, which I tried to get into it, it seems like it's very metaphorical, everything,
Yes,
and you kind
true.
of learn about the characters, but it is so difficult, at least from a Western perspective, to fully
Yeah.
get into the story.
Yeah, see, the story is secondary. The stories are
Mhm.
just there to kind of, it's like when you at a bar and you take a cocktail, they'll put all sorts of things in it. Like they put a little cherry in it, they'll put a little coloring in it. But the point is the alcohol, the liquor. That's what you're trying to
Yeah.
get into the system. It's like difficult to get liquor into the system direct,
Mhm.
right? Like, so we need to soften it. That's what stories are like. Religions are at the core of them is philosophy. Around that is mythology, and around that is ritual. So ritual is acting out the mythology, but all of that is just to help you get to the philosophy. So what we should do is we should look at the philosophy, I think, beyond its cultural context, because one thing we'll
Yes.
discover is that the teaching of the Gita has really nothing to do with its story. Not really. It's like the Gita is delivered in the context of the Mahabharata, set on the battlefield. Krishna is
Yes, yes,
his best
yes.
friend. All of
Yeah.
that's happening, right? But more importantly, basically, it's like the story of a person who is absolutely intimidated. Like you said, someone who might be in debt, someone who might be taking lots of medication, someone who's just intimidated by life. They have student loans and they have all these things, and they have a job that they feel like maybe is their calling or maybe isn't, and they're scared and they're despondent. And so Krishna in the Gita is speaking to just that sort of person.
That's
Right? So
awesome.
it's
Yeah,
very relevant.
and I have the feeling that also with other religions, like for example Christianity, and I'm not Christian, so I personally I don't have any religion, but sometimes when I listen to some teachings, then it feels like that's also like another story, but the teaching behind it seems to be quite similar to teachings
Yes.
from other religions, again, just with different
Right.
words. So
Yes.
again, I really loved what you said about the philosophy actually is something that is in the core of everything. And when you
Yes.
get the philosophy, then the stories completely become completely obsolete.
Precisely. People fighting about different religions, just people fighting about which story is true. But once you
Yeah,
put the stories aside, you see the essential message, which is the point, is the same. And so
yeah.
coming back to Ramakrishna, what's really special about that is he's a priest in a temple where lots of different religions are coming together and the
Mhm.
essence is being practiced. So Ramakrishna, he's a Hindu priest, Hindu in the sense that he's
Mhm.
worshiping Kali, he's a Brahmin, he's versed in the Vedas, all of that, right?
Yeah.
But he does something that no Hindu priest will ever do. He starts to practice Islam. He's just curious, like the Islamic Empire ruled in India for 700 years, and he's just curious, like, what's Islam all about? So he starts practicing Islam. He eats Muslim food, he dresses in
Yeah.
Muslim clothes, he does
Wow.
Muslim prayers, and he realizes that it works. He realizes Islam is actually a path that leads you to the same spiritual realization. Then he practiced Christianity, and he came to this conclusion that all the different world religions are all just like different paths leading to not the same, but leading to realization. And
Yeah.
so all religions are true in the sense that they all work. So that's, I think, the most important thing I could say is that all of this comes from that one priest who, in a small bedroom in that temple in Kolkata a couple hundred years ago, was teaching this message that we're sharing online.
That's a great, I would say, almost experiment somehow. If you come from one tradition, trying out the other ones and seeing if
Yes.
they actually also work in a similar way.
Yes.
But for me, it's always very challenging somehow to deal with religion because I feel like there is some sort of truth that I can feel when I'm just by myself and nobody's ever talking to me. Like when I'm just in silence, I kind of know. And then I will listen to things that will click. Like, for example, your messages. And I just listen to them. I don't have to do my research. I don't have to look anything up. I just listen to it and it clicks so on such a deep level that I know that matches my truth. And
Yes.
I will also experience it with different religions or teachings or spiritual messages, not with all messages, but sometimes it will happen. And then it's so difficult or so challenging for me sometimes to say, okay, I really want to practice this one religion or something, because it feels like giving my power away, like something that I would know already within myself. I would have to learn it with my mind from from a religious concept. I don't know
Yes.
if that makes sense, but it kind of
Yes,
feels like
it's
a
a good
step back.
point. There's a difference between like Christianity and churchianity. There's a difference
Mm,
between spirituality and religion. So often when people think of religion, what they're thinking of is institutions of power. So that phrase of like giving your power away, that's true. Most religions are about belief. They
mm,
say, here's a story, and if you don't believe in it, you'll go to hell. And if you don't believe in it, I'll kill you. Like that's what religion usually is like.
mm.
But in India, we have a very different idea of religion. By religion, we mean a science. So I like how you said the word experiment. Religion is a scientific process. Like religion is not founded on belief, it's founded on experience. So
Right.
all the religions in the world are basically founded upon the experience of prophets. But importantly, if we do what they did, if we take up the experiment for ourselves, the result is observable and tangible. So we should be able to have the same result. And until we see God, we shouldn't believe in God. Until we feel ourselves the soul, we shouldn't believe in the soul. So in India,
Wow.
religion is not about belief, it's not about books, it's not about churches, it's about a person's own individual quest for experience, for divine experience. So like you're the perfect religious person in that you're resonating with things that you feel are true in your heart,
Yeah.
and you're taking ideas from various religions. That's what we have in mind in India when we say the word religion. What I think in the West is called spirituality.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's called spirituality, but I also know that for maybe 2, maybe maximum 3 years, because right now there's also a bubble evolving so
Yes.
throughout social media, where it also becomes like a thing. Well, I don't want to say a crazy thing because I'm doing the
Yes.
crazy
You're
thing,
right.
but it becomes sort of a bubble where a lot of ego arises from it again.
You're very right. You're very right. It's like the new age, you could call it. It's very
Yes.
ungrounded and it's very appropriative. Like I was in a bookstore one time here
Mhm.
in Los Angeles, and then someone walked in and he said, I'm looking for the Book of the Dead. And I remember I just, he struck up a conversation. So I asked him, which one, the Egyptian or the Tibetan? And he
Tibetan, I
was
have.
stunned by that question because he didn't even understand that there were two different. There was an Egyptian Book of the Dead and there was a Tibetan Book of the Dead. And he was like, I want to combine them. And I remember thinking the hubris of that. He doesn't belong to either tradition, right? He has no idea what's in the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Yes.
He's initiated into that lineage.
Mhm.
He doesn't know any Pali or Sanskrit or anything, so he can't really interact with the tradition. And nor does he know the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And here he is about to make a claim on behalf of both these traditions. So the problem with the New Age, one good thing is that it looks for good ideas everywhere. One
Yes.
bad thing is it's just broad and ungrounded. So notice religions that are very dogmatic, the drawback is that they are very narrow, but the good side is that they're very grounded. They have a lineage, they have a tradition, their ideas are like checked and balanced, and so they don't become kind of all over the place. And
Mhm.
they do produce saints, but often those saints can be very bigoted. Whereas the broad-mindedness of the new age just leads to confusion, and then people are doing 10 different practices at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, of course, it's about money. Oftentimes, all religion is about money, and the new age is no different. They'll just try to sell you this water or that crystal or something like that. So it's
Yes.
ego, but it's also consumerism. So I think that's one of the drawbacks in not having a solid tradition or firm understanding.
How would you say would it be possible to avoid that trap to step into the, I would say, consuming or egotistical
Yes.
spiritualism?
Yes. I think it's like where you're saying like an authentic desire to connect with the truth of something and not it's just its representation on the internet. So for instance, it's kind of crazy that a lot of people are willing to kill others and die over a book they've never read in its original language, namely the Bible. Very few people have
Yeah,
actually read the Bible, right? Like they know what
yeah,
their pastor says at church, but
yeah.
the Bible is written mostly in Greek and Aramaic. But
Mhm.
people who don't know Greek and who don't know Aramaic are pretending to be authorities of a book that they have never read. Isn't that
Yes.
interesting?
Yes, that's so crazy. I always say that because sometimes people say, well, in this and that chapter, God was very mean or said this and that thing. And I just think, but isn't this also a matter of translation? Because I haven't read it in the original version for sure. And
Yes.
but what I know with my background, because I'm speaking different languages, I was moving through different countries, and what I know is that one single word can have such different translations
Yes, yes.
already that the whole context will entirely change.
Right. Take, for instance, Exodus. There's that line, suffer not a witch to live. The word in Greek is pharmakia, but
Mhm.
King James Bible translates it to witch. Now that's an interesting thing because pharmakia just means drug dealer or
Mm.
drug user, but the connotation that it must mean someone who's practicing magic, that's a bit of a stretch. So Constantine, King James, these are people who are editing and changing the Bible. So too with Tantra, with Vedanta, a lot of people on the internet are teaching about chakras and teaching about Kundalini, and that's wonderful. But a
Yeah,
lot of these people who claim to represent these traditions themselves are not really part of that tradition in the sense that they don't know the original text. They've never read those texts in their original language. They don't have gurus. And most of all, because if they don't have gurus and they don't have texts, they don't have checks and balances. They don't have accountability. So they can say whatever they want to say. And people who are very sincerely listening to them will just take them at their word, with no way of
of
like
course.
corroborating what they're saying. So then they become very quickly like cults of personality. For instance, there are teachers who will teach a method that actually belongs to a tradition, let's say Tibetan Tumo, where a
Mhm.
person using breath technique will heat up the body and be able to, dry wet blankets or something like that. That's a tradition, right? It exists within Tibetan Buddhism. But someone might come and say, okay, this is my method, and they use their own name and they put their own name to that method and they present that method as if it's their own thing. Now
I
that's
see.
productive because then it becomes a brand and they become
Mm.
kind of the leader of that community. But they don't have to deal with the checks and balances of the Tibetan lineage or whatever. So it's a matter of that, like not citing your sources, maybe a matter of trying to make everything yours and making it your own name. Whereas in the Indian tradition, you have to have a guru. Your guru should have a guru. She should have a guru. Like there should be a lineage. So you asked about guru earlier. Of course, I have a guru. I must. Because if I don't have a guru, then I would have no authority to teach any of this stuff.
Yeah, I understand, and it's also kind of provable because you have this lineage of people, and you can say, ah, okay, this knowledge comes from this person, from this, from that, and so on and so on. So you can
Exactly.
kind of see where everything arises from. But I would ask myself at this point, how can we even rely on any source that is
Yes.
written?
Exactly. And so we have to say, like, okay, there are some texts like the Vedas, for instance, Upanishads. There are
Mhm.
the Tantras or the Agamas, and everything we know about Kundalini, Chakra, yoga, like all that New Agey stuff, it comes from these texts called the Tantras and from the Agamas. Then there are lineages within this tradition, like Guru Paramparas, they're called lineages of teachers. And so we plug into a lineage, we access the text, and then like you said, you're going off of what resonates with you. Like when you hear something, you
Yes,
feel the truth of that, right? So we take
yes.
three things: one, what feels true for you; two, what your guru says; three, what the texts say; and more importantly, four, what your reasoning says. And if you put all of these together, it's not just you're believing in text, you're corroborating what the texts are saying with what your living teacher is saying, with what your heart and your inner intuition is saying, with what your
Right.
reason is saying. So if someone doesn't have a lot of reason and they just go with their heart, they're in trouble. If someone has no reason and they don't tap into their own truth and they just listen to their guru, they're in trouble. And if someone just follows the books, they're in trouble. So when you have all of these things together, the books, meaning the scripture, tantras,
Yes.
Vedas, etc., the teacher, reason, and trusting your own experience, this is what makes for good learning.
The balance. I love this.
Yes.
And how did these teachings, the spiritual teachings and or religious teachings find you?
Through Ramakrishna. So back to that story about Ramakrishna, the
Mhm.
temple priest. He, after he practiced Islam, he practiced Christianity, and then he had this realization that all religions are true in the sense that they all work. God is not a matter of belief, but a matter of experience. And different people use different names for God. Some people call it beauty, truth, Allah, Jesus, Krishna, whatever. So his disciple, Swami Brahmananda, his disciple Swami Shankarananda, and his disciple Swami Sarvadevananda, they are my gurus. So Swami Sarvadevananda is my guru, and it's coming through that. But importantly, also one of the disciples of Ramakrishna, his name is Vivekananda. He was the first yogi to speak in the West on topics like Kundalini, Chakra, yoga. He was arguably the first teacher of Tantra and Vedanta in the West. So a lot of this material that yoga studios in the West, all of that comes from Vivekananda. So that's, I think, how it came to me. My
Yeah.
grandfather, though, was in my opinion, a real saint in the Shaiva, Tantric Shaiva tradition. So when
Mhm.
I was born, I really had a good example from the very beginning in my grandfather of what, genuine spirituality looked like. So I was lucky
Oh,
in that way.
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And what was it like, or what was he like?
He was ecstatic. That's one thing. He was very quiet. He never really said very much about his spiritual practices. He was
Mhm.
more like show, don't tell kind of guy. He was a
Okay. Yeah.
temple singer, so he would go to the Hindu temple, the Shiva temple down the street, and he would sing. And when he would
Mhm.
sing, he wasn't a good singer. That was one thing very important that I noticed. He wasn't like he couldn't really hold a melody. He sang
Yeah.
in this kind of like raspy voice, but he had like devotion. When he looked and he looked at the image and he sang, you could feel like his whole heart was pouring into the song, and he would lose himself in the song and go into kind of like a trance state. It was very beautiful to see. I mean, he was very committed to the tradition and to the temple. And so, I would sit with him and he would have me memorize texts and we would sing them together. And we'd go to the cremation ground and there'd be funerals and we would stand next to the burning bodies and we'd sing these
Oh,
mantras. So that
wow.
was my beginning, just being with him. Once I remember late at night, I was up playing video games or something. But I remember I came outside and I noticed he was walking up the steps. It was like 4 in the morning or something, 3 or 4 in the morning. And he was in this like state. And to the end of his life, he was very sharp. He never had
Mhm.
any senility or anything like that. And he
Mhm.
had a really good memory. His mind was there. His body was falling apart, but his mind was there. So it's not a matter of like Alzheimer's or anything, but he was walking up the steps and he was like stumbling and staggering as if drunk and like touching the wall and going like Shiva, 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 like that. I remember it really made an impact on me just seeing him stumble
Yeah.
about saying the name of Shiva.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, because I do have sometimes the experience of a trance state or what you just said. Or I'm not even sure if I can call it like that, but it is a very specific feeling. I don't think I have ever mentioned that to anyone, but it is like I decide to be in this state or I decide to feel in a certain way, and I feel extremely light unless I decide to think and go in my head again to have my head experience. But I can have a brighter experience, like everything feels bigger or I perceive things bigger. And when I walk around, I hear more, I can see more. The colors are way more vivid. And um, even the most maybe significant thing is the sound for whatever reason. Like I really hear way more than I would usually hear, even like very high tones, and that's very beautiful. That I feel like I'm a bigger version of myself walking around. But then sometimes it becomes boring, if I can even say it like that. But it feels like it becomes a bit boring because I cannot think about about my average to-dos or whatever I have to
Yes.
finish, and then I just go back into my head and it all becomes way more plain and normal.
Right. Just being able to move between those two levels. I think the Zen tradition calls it small mind and big mind. Like
Yeah.
Shunryu says, you can zoom out
Hmm.
and you like drop into the heart or something, and then you feel, right, like this expansiveness and it's
Yes.
peaceful, glorious. And at the same time, you have the ability to willingly move between these two states. And on a metaphysical level in Tantra, that's called Shiva Shakti. Shiva is this
Yeah.
pure awareness,
Hmm.
the consciousness, like just pure non-dual awareness. It's like the witness of every experience.
Yes.
It's not the body, it's not the mind, it's not even Anna or Nish or anything like that. It's just
Yeah.
one awareness, and that's Shiva. And then, for whatever reason, Shiva desires to play. And like
Yes.
you pointed out,
Yeah.
there's like
Yeah.
this desire to like act and to manifest. And so Shiva is endowed with this inherent will. It's called Shakti. And Shakti is Shiva's ability to both project a world and experience himself as that world. So then a world appears, everything these colors and sounds, and then there's something to hear, something to smell, something to taste, and it's also vivid. And then Shiva enters that world as Anna and like almost like forgets that he's Shiva in order to
Yeah.
be Anna.
Yeah.
Not really,
Yeah.
Shiva never forgets he's Shiva, but as Anna now you can cry and you can grieve and you can lose loved ones and you can suffer and you can get old, you can get sick and you can die. All of these things sound horrible, but from Shiva's point of view, it's just like watching a horror movie or something. It's
Yeah.
fun.
Right.
Life in its tragedy is fun.
Yes, yes, it's really what it feels like, because I also ask myself, do I really want to go back when I'm like just in between of staying where I am in blissfulness and in peace, and going back into my experience somehow and just feeling the things again and going back into my head. And I think, why would I want that? Why would I want to go back into my head? But for whatever reason, I decide to do that all the time. And
Yes.
yeah, it seems to be more fun or just more of an experience, and you also want to talk to people, you want to engage with them, you want to exchange your perspectives, and it wouldn't be possible if you would be just flying around.
Yeah, it's true. And like there's a meaning, there's a value in us having this conversation. It's like there's only one reality called Shiva, but
Hmm.
that Shiva becomes Anna and becomes Nish, pretends to be two, and then has
Yes.
this interaction. There's like a meaning to it, this moment and this interaction.
Yes, yeah, that's really so beautiful. This concept or this idea of non-duality, because this is the idea that I just feel is true for me. Like to me, none of the concepts, nothing that let's say, teaches division makes any sense. It doesn't click. I understand it with my brain. But what
Yeah.
I really feel is that it is everything is one organism, even from a logical perspective. If we don't
Right.
go into spiritualism, it makes sense because if you zoom out, the whole planet, and even if we go wider than that, like
Right.
the whole universe probably is like one thing. It is one being that is experiencing everything through different people, through different beings and organisms.
Yes.
And just
Right.
because we perceive ourselves as separate doesn't mean that we don't play a bigger role in a whole play. And this is like already a very conceptual perspective that I'm talking
Yeah.
about. The other one is when you really feel that you are kind of it or you or anything and everything.
And that's another interesting thing, like the concepts being a more Shiva energy and the
Mhm.
feeling, the embodied sense of that concept being more Shakti. And when we have the embodied sense without the concept, it's good but not great. If we have the concept without the embodied sense, maybe it's much worse because it
Yeah.
just becomes up here. But
Mhm.
it's nothing, there's nothing quite like having both the concept and the embodied experience. So like a lot of tantra is to bring head and heart together,
Together.
big mind and a small mind. And so the idea of non-duality, it's not opposed to duality. There's duality and there's non-duality. And we can say, oh, non-duality is true and duality is false. But in Tantra, in this version of Tantra at least, the goal is to say, no, non-duality is ultimately true. And yet it's still possible to have a dualistic experience like this from within the context of non-duality.
Yeah, and it is also valid and important, and yeah, and it has a lot of value or can bring value to other people. Because I was just thinking, why is it that we have religions for such a long time, and still people wouldn't engage with the idea of non-duality so much, but will get lost in concepts? Like, why is it like that? Because one is way older than the other, and still people will kind of laugh about you when you talk about these broader concepts. And I'm just asking myself, why didn't non-dualism make it further yet?
It's funny because it seems like non-duality did really well in India. It didn't do so well in the West. Most of the non-dualists in the West, like Meister Eckhart, he was a great Christian non-dualist. He was excommunicated from the church, and a lot of great Sufis who were also non-dualist. All of them, most of them were killed. So what I've noticed is that the West doesn't really do that well with religion for the most part.
Yes.
It's very good with like science and like physical stuff. Like it's good with practical, like this worldly kind of stuff, which is good. That's
Mhm.
like the left hemisphere of the brain, maybe. I don't know if we can use that outdated model. Like
Yeah.
the thing that the West is good at doing is building cities and establishing political systems. It absolutely sucks when it comes to psychology and spirituality and religion.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like the first time someone has an opposite idea, they have a 30 years war and kill each other over it. But the thing about India, what's unique about India is that there has never been a religious war prior to the Mughal invasion of the 13th century. Now, unfortunately, Indians have become, I think, somewhat unfortunately polarized
Mhm.
with this Hindu Muslim concept. And it's kind of sad. We're heading in a direction where Indians are very upset at other Indians because they don't like. But back then, before the Mughal invasion, we didn't have this colonial idea that other religions are bad and we should kill them. In fact, if you had a different religion, I had a different religion, we just debate. And the debates were really, really competitive. Like if we had different religions, like say I was a non-dualist and you were a dualist, and if we had a debate, if you won, I would have to become your disciple.
Ah,
Isn't that so cool? That was the tradition in India, but we would never kill each other
that's
over
funny.
it. Like each of us would have our own position and it would be valid. And so India, it's kind of like socially back then, it's social institutions maybe might have
Love
struggled, but
that.
religious institutions were flaws. Like no one was ever killed in India prior to the Mughal invasion for their religious views. And so non-duality really flourished. Take, for instance, the Buddha. The Buddha was a straight up, like, if not atheist, at least agnostic. Here's
Mhm.
a man who disagreed with the idea of the Vedas, who
Mhm.
didn't agree with the idea of God, who didn't agree with the idea of the eternal soul, and yet temples all over India who believed in the Vedas, who believed in God, who believed in the soul, were more than happy to host this guy and give him a platform so he could speak to the masses and give them their idea. That was the religious tolerance
Awesome.
of it. So therefore, India must be the big sister for the rest of the world when it comes to spirituality, because
For
that's just
real.
what we're good at.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I just watched one video of yours. I wanted to share that one first when I was sharing something today, but then I decided to go for the bold one where you say you are God, because that's just such a powerful message, and it's just 100% my truth. I still also liked one video about the goddess Kali, and since you mentioned that before, I thought maybe we can talk about her too, because another aspect of non-duality is that the idea portrays the good and the bad equally, and that we don't devalue things that we consider painful or that we think are negative, painful, harmful, whatsoever. So we try to see the beauty in everything. And yeah, I wanted to talk about this video because I just think it has such a powerful, beautiful message, and it helps to deal with things that we don't prefer also.
Kali, importantly, is the central goddess of Tantra, and she's very associated to non-duality for exactly the reason that you pointed out. Because the basic duality that we experience in our life is our preferences. Those of us who believe in God often have to create some kind of devil figure to express what God is not, which to me seems preposterous. If there is a God, how can there be something other than God who is about as equally powerful as God? Like the idea of a
Yes.
devil is kind of blasphemous, actually, because it suggests that God isn't all inclusive, God's power is an absolute. If there is a God, then we have to accept that God is responsible for everything, including all the bad stuff. Like we're praying to God, oh, poor me, I'm suffering from cancer. Oh, God, please take away my cancer. Hare, God is the one who gave you the cancer to begin with. And that
I love
idea is
this.
really hard
Yes.
for people to
Yeah.
accept. And even more radical than that is the idea that God herself
True.
becomes you in order for her to experience what it's like to have cancer. That's an even more radical idea, but that's the tantric idea that there is one reality, and
We'll
through
have to
Kali,
clip.
what's that?
Sorry, I will have to clip this. This was just epic.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that line also. So, yes, the goddess Kali. She represents the non-dual idea that God can also be seen in that which is dark and horrible. And if we can see God in the good, that's good. We should start with that. We should start by seeing God in the beautiful and in the noble and in the high and pure. But then eventually, once we know more about God, we start to see God also in the impure, in the lowly, in the dark, in the macabre. So famine, death, disease, all of that becomes just as divine as flowers and sunshine and unicorns and what have you. So Kali is that image of those two brought together. And we worship Kali. What we're doing is we're trying to train our minds to experience non-duality, to see God in everything.
Yes, I love it as a practice because it is more challenging to see God in the bad stuff than just appreciating everything that is positive. And there was also, well, there was another video that I just saw, I think yesterday, that said, why is it that we see the bad stuff so much? Why do we see all the bad things so much more than the good ones? And the answer was, well, because the good stuff is the default, because everything's good, and we just don't pay attention anymore because it's so much, it's such a default mode somehow. Like sun is shining, or we have clear water, or we have food on the table, and all these things, they are so beautiful and so good, but we stop appreciating them. But once something happens that we don't like, this thing will be extremely enhanced. And
Yes.
it's so powerful to see the divine in the things that we dislike as well, so we don't take its power away in our mind.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really beautiful point. When the body is ill, you notice it because it's so noticeable when something is wrong. Otherwise, the body is running smoothly all the time. You barely feel it.
Yes, I just had another question because we were talking about prayer, and it was, or you were talking about prayer, and you said, yeah, we are asking God for health or for, yeah, specific things. And what I have realized, what I've heard first, and what I've also realized for myself, is that the best prayers, or the ones that work best, were the ones of gratefulness and not the ones of asking. And I'm wondering why
Yes.
it is like that.
It's a really good point because often, we compare God's will to my will. It's actually the same, but in
Hmm.
spiritual life, the quest is to go from let my will be done to let thy will be done. That's surrender, because really the prayer is one of many spiritual practices that are
Hmm.
meant to overcome your little self.
Hmm.
Like some people feel so trapped in the body and mind, and they feel so stuck because of their preferences. They want X, but they're getting Y.
Hmm.
Like they want health, but they're ill. They want money, but they're poor. And so they look to God as this like cosmic sky daddy that you can ask to for allowance, you know? Like,
Yes.
I want money. And that's okay. That makes sense. Like a child should look to a father for protection. That's fine. Um, and it's true. Sometimes when we ask for stuff, it does happen. Will is absolute. So the very condition that we're trying to escape is caused by God, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever reason, we might not know it. We as a little self might not understand why all of this is going to be helpful in the long run. But often when we look back at all the things that sucked, the things that really, really hurt, we look back at that and we say, well, that's when I felt most alive, actually. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
like it at that time, but my life felt most meaningful. Then, like Viktor Frankl, for instance, in Man's Search for Meaning, he had to go through one of the worst experiences that a human could possibly go through, like being in a concentration camp,
Yeah.
both Auschwitz and Dachau. And he was able to say, as a result of all of that, that he actually realized the true value of life. Like it was finding meaning even in that. Because
Mm-hmm.
while he couldn't control his outcome, he could control his response to that outcome. But importantly, it heightened his experience of presence. So we only understand that
Yes.
later. While we're suffering, though, we're praying to God and we're like, oh God, please remove this suffering. It implies a lack of understanding. It's God who caused this suffering. So now the two wills are opposed. God's will is that I should have cancer. My will is that I should be healthy. Shouldn't God's will ultimately be more important than mine? So the better prayer would be, even beyond like gratitude is of course really powerful, which is like, let me just look at the things that I'm grateful for in life. Not so fast, because those things will be taken away too. I can be like,
Mm-hmm.
look, I might have cancer, but at least I have my family. Not so fast.
Yeah.
Don't think
Yeah.
we can all die. Like, don't
Yeah.
forget, like, that's the
Yeah.
important thing. The very things that we're grateful for today will not be with us tomorrow. And then we can tomorrow try to find other things to be grateful for. And that's a wonderful practice. But true prayer, arguably, is a prayer of total surrender. Like, this is just what's happening, and that's God's will. And God, do with me what thou wilt. I'm like a little baby kitten, and you, the mother cat, can grab me by the scruff of my neck and put me on the bed, or you can put me on the floor, you can put me in the kitchen. I don't care. I just love you, and I'm just gonna say mew, mew, mew the whole time.
I love this. You know what? This just reminded me of something because I did this thing one time to the extreme that I practiced complete surrender. And this was the time that completely and entirely changed my life. And this was one single day of practice. It was one day of complete surrender, and something happened. It was like, I don't know, something completely changed from the state that I was in, like how I felt about myself. I felt extreme love. I felt like I was like my personality deconstructed itself just in one day. And my idea was to really to just be quiet and to just feel the feeling of surrender. And I think this was such a I cannot even say I did this and that, because it was more like an inner experience, but it was so profound when I did that. And I feel this was a life-changing event that maybe it was a prayer after all. I just haven't recognized it as such. I just thought I want to give up, and things changed. So maybe that's really beautiful because I have never thought about this event as a prayer.
Wow. What a beautiful description. Thank you for sharing that. That's really profound. I think that's exactly
Yeah.
right. That's exactly
Yeah.
it. That experience of just the ego deconstructing. And that usually
Yeah.
happens in the moment of horrible suffering. Like, say you lose a loved one tragically, or you
Mhm.
suddenly watching your house burn down, or like your body is breaking. Like all of these are extreme moments when the ego just cannot hold itself together anymore.
Mhm.
And it's so mysterious, but people sometimes feel the most alive, the most ecstatic, the most connected to God in moments like that because of
Mhm.
that total surrender. It's like there's nothing I can do anymore. I don't understand this. I'm powerless. I just, Lord, do with me what thou wilt. And so prayer is like relaxing into what is without needing it to be anything other than it is.
Yes, that's great. Yeah, I don't know why I did that. So in my case, there was no specific trigger or nothing happened. I just wanted that, or I thought that would be. I would like to know what happens if, because I would like. Usually, I would ask for things, or I would ask to learn things, to be more precise. So I would like to learn something about a specific topic. For example, once I've asked what is forgiveness, and I was just relaxing and I just wanted to know what forgiveness is, for example, because I didn't understand what is it, like what is everyone talking about, what does it feel like. I understand what is hunger, I understand what is love, I understand what is sadness, but what is forgiveness? And so I would just ask for things. But in that specific case, I didn't want to ask for one thing. I just said, teach me whatever I have to learn. And this was the surrendering. And this changed a lot. So I feel like that's the magical key, feels like, to just let it happen, to just yeah, leave it to the universe somehow.
Right. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Because you're right. It's not that as intentional as people think,
Yeah,
you know? And also, what we call God doesn't matter at all. Like a
yeah,
lot of people become really fussy about the name that you use, or you have to pray to Jesus, or you have to pray to Allah. No, no, no. The word universe, the word truth, the word beauty, like it really doesn't matter
yeah.
what you call God. It just matters how you feel.
Yes, yes, and this was exactly the love of God, the love of everything, because this life-changing event I'm talking about, because before that, I did know what it feels like if I love someone or something, or like when I say I love my pet, for example. At that point, I wasn't married yet, so okay, I had my cat. So I would say, okay, I love this cat with all my heart, and I knew what it would feel like. But on the other hand, I didn't know what it feels like to be loved back with such an intensity. And I felt it, but I felt it not from one person or one cat or one something. I felt it from everything. And I just thought, what do I even worry about? Why am I even worrying about anything? Like, it was such a beautiful feeling. I felt like I'm 3 years old and I'm perfectly fine.
Right. Yes, they say state of a jivan mukta, meaning
Mhm.
one who is totally free in this life while embodied, a person who feels like this, like the entire universe loves me, for the universe is itself
Yes,
love, and I am myself from love. I exist in love and I dissolve into love. There's nothing here but love. And when
yeah,
we experience that as his body and as his mind, the experience becomes like the experience of a child in the lap of its mother. You just know that you'll be protected. Even in the midst of like hunger and despair, you just know with the
yes.
whole of your being that you'll be okay.
Yes, and I had everything there. Like, I was at a lake and with a friend of mine, and I had a few berries. We didn't really have much to eat, but I knew everything will be fine. It started to get cold, and I thought, maybe I'd need a pullover. But then I had like a mini jacket, and I thought, that's enough. Like usually you would think further and think, oh, it will be even more cold in 1 hour, and it will be dark soon. But it didn't matter at all, because I just knew it's all fine. It's taking, like, everything is taking care of me, and I don't just have enough, I have a little bit more than enough, and that's okay.
Precisely, precisely. Like, that's why, like Christ, for instance, he would say to people, "Don't care about don't think about tomorrow. Just be here now." Or he would say things like, "Look at the lily. It neither sows, it doesn't sows nor reaps, yet it's clad in raiment finer than even King Solomon." He would look at the lily and he would say, "That's abundance, actually." And he
Yeah.
himself slept on the ground. The foxes have their holes, the birds have their nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. That idea that like a person who's really in love with God
Hmm.
is not necessarily going to be reclining in the back of a Maserati with like 50 rings, and like they could be, no doubt. But most of the time, their life is a simple life because they have this feeling that you felt like a few berries, a few blankets by the side of the lake. It's fine. I have
Yes.
everything
Yeah.
and I'm fulfilled and everything is going to be okay. The mark of a person who believes in God, this is, I think, the fact, is that they will never have fear and they'll never have worry. Because if God is for real, like if there's actually God and it's a matter of experience, not just concept, then what do
Yeah.
I have to worry about? My mother is here with me in each and every moment.
Yes. Yeah. And for example, when people experience a loss of a family member, like, let's say, for example, my uncle died a few weeks ago, and there were so many family members that were just very, very sad. And I cannot say that I wasn't. Like, I was for a few minutes somehow, but I didn't feel any disconnection. I didn't feel like he's left or like he's far away. If anything, then I felt that he's closer than before, because he was so sick I couldn't even talk to him, and now I had the feeling now I can. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like there are, five people in the room. It's like there are five cups in space. And
Hmm.
when I move one cup, we think, oh, I'm moving the space in the cup. But it's
Hmm.
not like that. Rather, it's I'm moving the cup in space. That's what
Yes.
our being is like. We're not in a body. The body is like a cup. We are the space. And death is just breaking the cup. And so what you realize is that nothing is lost. The cup is broken, but the same space that was there in the cup is still there. And it's part of all the space, and it's part of the space that you are too. So a deep
Wow.
spiritual insight here is that nobody dies. Bodies just come, bodies just go, but nobody dies because it's all just spaciousness. Now for a moment, seemingly confined in this body, now for a moment in a bigger cup, in a smaller cup, different cups, but ultimately one with the space. So no one can die actually.
Oh, wow. Now I have to ask you a very crazy question because
Please.
of this topic. Because well, there is this idea of the Neuralink. It's a little bit of a change right now, and
Yeah.
uploading the consciousness. But when we are talking about the idea that we are immortal anyway,
Yes,
how much
exactly.
sense does it make, or do you think it, or how do you feel about this idea that people are thinking about uploading consciousness?
Yeah, I think it's an indication of a spiritual maturity. They're
Mhm.
starting to understand in their own way, in like their AI kind of sci-fi language, they're starting to understand we're not our bodies. See, the big problem here is that we think the body produces the brain, and we think that the brain produces consciousness.
Mhm.
But that's simply not true. No scientist can ever show the link between electrical chemical reactions in the brain and consciousness. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't a link between brain and mind. There certainly is. If you change one part of the brain, the mind will change, meaning your personality could change, you might forget things, you might
Yeah, yeah.
all of that can happen. But consciousness is not the mind, you see. Consciousness is the one in whom the mind appears. So if
Yes.
I'm aware of thoughts, if I'm aware of emotions, that's consciousness and that's what you are. So when
Mhm.
people are talking about uploading themselves, what they're talking about is uploading their minds. But
Yes.
notice, it's a much more sophisticated understanding of self than what we used to have. We used to think I'm a body. Now people know, no, 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 I'm not a body. The body is just a tool that I use to interact with the world. I'm a mind. There's a higher level though. I'm not even a mind. The mind is just a subtle body. What I am is consciousness. That doesn't need to be uploaded anywhere because it's
Yeah,
forever, you
because
know?
it's
And so
there anyway. Yeah.
yes, this whole Neuralink thing only makes sense in like a materialistic perspective. But
Mhm.
in the Indian sense, like the Indian spiritual sense, they've always known that the mind outlives the body. So when the body dies, the mind, which is called the jiva means like embodied person, basically the psychological self, that jivatman actually takes on a new body, like you would change clothes. And
Mhm.
so death is just a change of clothes, and then you reincarnate into a new body based on what we call samskaras, based on the momentum of this life. You take on a new body that's suited. Like let's say someone really loves like eating and having sex or something. Their whole life is just about eating and fucking. That's their whole
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
right? Actually, the human body is not the best body for that. Like dogs can enjoy food and sex way more than humans can. I mean, we can enjoy it, but not like a dog can. I mean, like a dog can eat whatever and like it goes to town on its doggy dinner bowl, you know? So if a
Yeah.
person was really motivated by those animalistic tendencies, when this body dies, those samskaras, like I really want to eat, will manifest as a dog body in order for them to be able to continue that project.
To express that. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
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 But
And it's
is
not punishment, it's just expression.
yeah. So is what people understand as karma, is it probably a little bit misleading somehow? Because they
Yes, because
always
it's
think it's
punitive.
punishment. Yeah.
Yes, because it's karma nowadays is read in a kind of Judeo-Christian guilt narrative where it's
Yeah.
like if you do bad stuff will happen. No, 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 good and bad. Just the other day, I had a Sufi over at my house,
Mhm.
and we were watching a horror movie together. And after the horror movie, we were comparing notes. And the horror movie was about like black magic. It was like there was like this family who like wanted to sacrifice the parents to the devil or something like that. And I
And
remember like we had a discussion about it. He was like, "This is black magic," and I'm like, in the East we don't really it's not like we just don't have this notion of like good and evil. There are people who want to kill, and maybe they kill by magic, maybe they kill by sword. Killing is bad. It's not somehow worse just because you're using magic. The
yeah,
same
yeah,
who will kill will
yeah.
kill. Just now they're doing it in the name of a sacrifice. I'm like, it's good actually. It's good that the killer is at least thinking of God while they kill. Like, they'll kill anyway. So just because
Right.
they're killing God doesn't make it worse. We had this huge conversation about like Judeo-Christian values and Indian
I
values
love
about
this.
and if you're from that culture of like Judeo-Christian, good and bad, now then it sounds like, oh my God, I'm gonna be born a dog. Oh, that's bad, but only because you think a human birth is better than a dog birth. Not so in India. We say you just get what you want. Like if you want food and sex, then be a pigeon, be a dog. You can have as much of those things as you want. That's not bad. That's just what you want, and that's okay. I want something else maybe, and that's good for me and not good for you.
Yes.
Like say, if I took my friend to go listen to classical music, she would love it. I would hate it because she
Hmm.
loves classical music. I don't. But
Yeah.
that's good for her, hell for me. So we don't have a concept of heaven or hell. Like
Hmm.
my hell is probably her heaven, and her heaven is my hell. So it's
Right.
all in.
Right. I love this. Can you share the name of the movie?
Oh, I think it was Sinister. We watched Sinister 1 and 2. We just back to back. We just had a double feature. We finished our worship and then we just watched Sinister 1 and 2 because we just wanted to like watch a scary movie in the middle of the night.
Yeah, yeah, I have to write that down because I have such attacks too sometimes. I don't know why, because usually I want this harmonic stuff and I want peaceful things, but sometimes I just need something that is like more has tension, that is
Yes,
kind of
yes.
smart, and you try to solve the case, and I don't know what. And usually those are horror movies. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I love horror movies. I'm a huge horror movie fan, but also it's okay. We don't have to go looking. Our life itself will be that. That's
Yeah,
a,
yeah,
the
yeah.
body goes old, the body gets sick, the body dies. Oh my God, that's scary.
Yeah, a part of me is a little bit scared, or it scares itself, because I think, oh no, if I watch too much of that, then I will unconsciously manifest that into my reality. Because it happened to me several times that I was watching something, and elements of what I was watching, I would recognize them at least
Oh
in my
yes, yes.
everyday experience. So I always think, okay, maybe I shouldn't watch too
Yeah, yeah.
many of
That's
those.
actually very true. My Sufi friend said the same thing. He's like, one should not watch too many horror movies because then, these elements will, and that's the thing. Whenever you watch something, whenever you listen to something, you have to actually consent to that appearing in your reality.
Hmm.
So the reason I watch a lot of horror movies is mostly because I'm like okay with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't mind if all that bad stuff happens to me. It's like whatever, I'm a worshiper of Kali. It's no big deal. But it is true. What you're
I
saying
love
is
that.
really,
Yeah.
really true. Like it will, like if we do watch horror movies, it will make an impression on the mind, especially
Hmm.
if we go into like Dolby surround sound, we go into a movie.
Yes.
Like no, it will, and it will change our reality. That's the fact. So some people are doing a really good job avoiding all that stuff, and they should avoid it
Yes.
if they don't want the outcome.
Yeah, yeah, I do that with music too, that I became way more conscious about what I'm listening to. And even if I
Good.
like a song, but the lyrics are really crap, so someone is just crying around and is just unhappy with their life and complaining, which is very often in songs and in love songs, for example, that people will just be full of complaints, then I tend to not listen to it because it just drags me down once I've realized that. And I'm kind of worrying that my subconscious mind takes that, and
Yes.
does something with it. Yeah.
That's very good. There was like a 2 year period in my own life, quite recently, where I would not listen to any music unless it was like chant music. It had to be like kirtan, it had to be something divine and inspiring. I
Mhm.
wouldn't watch any media unless it was like lectures by great spiritual masters. Like I
Same.
wouldn't read
Yeah.
any books unless like that was the period for a while. Then after that, after feeling a bit more grounded in that, then I
Hmm.
decided to experiment a bit. And in the name of non-duality, now my watch whatever, read whatever, and try to feel God in that too.
Wow, I love that. And I think that's a great tip. And also probably because when I feel that I am not very grounded, then maybe the better idea would be to watch what I'm watching and to take more
Yes.
care of that and pay more attention. And when I do feel grounded, and when I'm in the state where you are right now, that I feel like, hey, whatever comes, comes, and I'm in my surrender mode, then anything can come
Yes.
because
That is
anything is
fun.
appreciated.
And that's a really good thing that you're pointing out that we have to know where we are. Like,
Yeah.
I feel stable and grounded only when I know that I'm not the body and mind,
Hmm.
will non-duality make sense. But if I feel like the body and mind, then some duality is required. Like this music is good for my spirituality, this music is not. This movie will help me, this movie won't. That level of duality is in the beginning quite good. My master used to give an example of water. Let's say all water is the same, right? But not really, because some water is used for drinking, some water for bathing, some water for washing the dishes, and some water for the bathing the body. So
Yeah.
you shouldn't drink the water that you use to bathe the body.
Hmm.
That's like it. Water is all the same, but it's different purposes. Similarly, everything is God, but that doesn't mean you go and hug the tiger. No, the tiger is God, but like let that tiger God be over there. I'll bow from a distance. Some
Right.
people talk to them. You should stay away from them. Doesn't mean they're not God. But just to
Hmm.
keep the play going, it's important to, I think, have boundaries, to not watch this, to watch that, to not hang out with those people. You can still do that within a non-dual context.
Well, yeah, that's also very, very helpful right now, because there is another thing that sometimes I will point out my boundaries very clearly. So I will say, okay, I don't want to hang out in that group of people. Or I don't want to see these people, not because they're bad, but just because, no, I just want to be by myself, or I have my preferences when it comes to friends, let's say. So I'm like, I have a very, very clear filter right now. And then I will get the question, yeah, but why not? Because if everything is you and if everything is God, shouldn't you be everywhere? And then I will think about, yeah, Jesus was hanging around like prostitutes and beggars and corrupt people as well, and would appreciate everyone. And I think, oh my God, so should I be like that? Should I just be everywhere? On the other hand, my intuition and my feeling tells me you like boundaries, and boundaries are good for you. So how can I handle that better?
Yes, because remember, he's Jesus.
Yeah, right.
He does not need any boundaries. Like he's
Yeah.
at that level of his spirituality where really it wouldn't harm him to hang
Mhm.
out with people who, but we should, I think, in all humility, recognize that, like, actually no, we do. We're like say a plant, when it's very, very small, you need to hedge it around, otherwise the goats and the cows will come and trample it. But once that bud turns into an oak tree, then you don't need the boundaries anymore. Then even if a rhinoceros were to hit the tree, it'll be fine. So I
Yes.
think similarly with us, you have to recognize everything is God, but there are important boundaries. And if we don't have boundaries, then we are allowing another person to incur bad karmas by harming us. And so it's not compassionate, actually, to
No.
not observe boundaries. So when you observe boundaries, it's like it doesn't change. They're God, I'm God, and now God is setting up a boundary against God as part of God's play. Why not?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Why not? And it also feels like maybe I'm just at the stage of my own evolution or whatever where I really need that and where I feel that I actually express more love towards someone else if I do set boundaries because they have the chance to see themselves in this specific mirror that I'm giving them through the boundaries. And I think
Yes.
I also don't want to devalue it or to say like everyone like just come in and just be here and everything because I think also these limitations that we oppose on each other are also kind of important so we see ourselves better through each other.
It's true. It's a sure way for spiritual confusion if we just allow everyone all the time to come in and be in our space. The best, most successful spiritual practitioners are usually the ones with the strongest, most clearly defined boundaries. Like I know a monk, for instance, if you're sitting with him and people are sitting in a circle, the moment someone starts to talk about politics, he'll just get up and walk away.
I love that. I need to do that more often.
Yes. The really, really powerful spiritual people that I've met in my life, they are absolutely uncompromising when it comes to their boundaries. There are
Hmm.
conversations they will not have, communities they will not be a part of, media they will not see. And there's a way that they spend their time. Like they're going to sit and meditate for 2 hours in the morning, and nothing can change that. They're very fixed in their schedules, in their routines, in their practices. And I think that is very important for spiritual practitioners. It
Okay.
almost
Yeah.
cruel, but it's not. It's the real cruelty is not taking that time to become realized. The real kindness to others is to step back from the world and work on one's spirituality.
I love that. Yeah, and I really needed that too, because sometimes people will challenge these beliefs. And I know that when I express boundaries also with family, like that's for me always the best example. Like I will say, no, I don't engage in this and that activity. No, I don't want to join because it's not a feeling. I just don't belong there. I just know, no, I want my schedule. I want to be in silence today. I don't want people today. And they will challenge that. But yeah, but if you are like this and that, then you have to come, you have to join, you have to be part of the group. And I just don't think so. Or it doesn't feel right. It's not even the thinking. It's again this, it doesn't click with me. It just feels very wrong. And now this, what you just said, this clicks extremely that we we don't have any chance to be more of ourselves or to be more authentic if we are constantly bombarded with other people's beliefs and thoughts and feelings and everything.
Yes, it's true. I mean, any philosophy, any concept can be used this way or that way to justify this or to justify that. And
Yeah.
so that's the same thing with concepts. You're right. An embodied experience is
Hmm.
a bit more worthwhile. That's why I think having the guru, having the scriptures, having the
Right.
concept, and having the embodied experience will help you, not go too far in one
In any
extreme.
direction. Love
Because
it.
your intuition can easily become just conditioning. Like what I think I want to do might not actually be the right thing to do. It just might be my conditioning. And
Mm-hmm.
so the concept helps protect me against what I think is intuition, but is really just habit or conditioning. Whereas my intuition helps me from believing in concepts that don't feel true for me. And my guru helps check and balance when I, get confused between concept and embodied experience. And the scripture helps keep my guru accountable. So he or she or they don't just say whatever.
I love that. Where do I find a guru?
Yes, and that's the thing. Once the intuition for a spiritual teacher arises, like you feel like say somebody wants to learn to drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before they want to drive, they won't look for a driving teacher. Like the concept of a driving school or a driving teacher is not even part of their conscious experience. They just
Yeah.
go in about their day and say, like, hey, it'd be cool to drive. The moment they have that thought, the next thought is, and now I need somebody to teach me. And so they'll just like they'll start being attentive. They look around driving school, and suddenly the driving school that was right there down the street, which they've been driving by every single day, now they notice it. The fact is there are more teachers around us than we could ever imagine. The gurus are always there, but we
Mm-hmm.
just don't notice them because we don't yet know we need one. But once we feel in our heart, I want a guru. In other words, I want to have a real spiritual experience, and for that, I need a mentor. The moment we have that decision, it's like a magnet. The one who seeks the guru will draw the guru into their life.
do you think it needs to be like in the old times that it is one specific person and the person knows about you? Or is it that in this time of internet and digitalization, we can just pick someone who is probably just a public figure and who represents our interests or our beliefs, and we can just use this person as a orientation?
Yes, it's more like the second one, except you have to be very careful because sometimes what a person is on the internet is not who they really are. And so
Mhm.
we have to be very careful that we don't conflate charisma or a cult of personality with genuine spiritual authority. See, if you want to
Yeah.
judge a guru, it's very difficult to actually judge them based on the internet. And one should judge a guru because it's like my guru used to say, it's like a money lender should test the coins, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Before you make a purchase, you have to test the product. So before you choose a guru, you have to be very discerning, actually. You have to know three
Yeah.
things. One, is that guru like actually pure? In other words, in any other thing, it's just about information. And an asshole can teach you chemistry because in chemistry, all you want to do is learn chemistry. You don't, the
Yeah.
character of the person teaching is not that important. But when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to spirituality, they have to walk the talk. Their character must really, really be stellar, right? And secondly, they have to be doing it for the right reasons because there's a guru business, unfortunately, where
Mm-hmm.
people are gurus
Mm-hmm.
and then they, basically they start cults and they take people's money and they cross their boundaries and all sorts of horrible things can happen because people don't understand this teacher-student relationship. The teacher ends up having too much power, and like you said earlier, it's difficult to be part of a religion because it feels like you're giving your power away.
Yes.
That easily happens with guru yoga because the teacher is cult-like and charismatic and demands respect, and then you feel like,
Mm.
oh, my teacher, and you give up your power, and that's another problem. So you have to
Yes.
make sure the teacher is teaching out of love. Like the gift of knowledge must be given freely from love. Doesn't mean the teacher isn't taking donations or the teacher isn't like, but
Of
you have to
course. Yeah.
sense the authenticity of what they're
Yes.
doing. And most importantly, I think you have to check, does the teacher have a teacher? What's that lineage like? Do you
Mm-hmm.
resonate and vibe with the lineage? Does the teacher cite scripture and does the teacher empower you to also do your own research? Or is she or he or they just saying things as if it's like the law? Many internet gurus, they have a big beard and a big turban, and they just say whatever on the internet. And it blows my mind. Some of these gurus who have huge media followings,
I
they
know.
really say on YouTube, they'll say, "Oh, I've never read any book." I'm horrified. I'm like, if you've never read any book, if you've not at all studied anything, you're just up here like saying whatever you want. I mean, how do you know that's just not what you think? There's no way
Yes.
of checking it. So be careful. The teacher must know scripture, not in the sense that they're academic, but they have to at least be accountable. The teacher
Mm-hmm.
must be pure, must be doing it for the right reasons. You must know the teacher's teacher, and I think most importantly, you have to know the teacher's student. Like say, like if you name one big internet teacher, my first question would be point to one of that teacher's students, and then I'll
Wow.
know. Because the point is not how great the teacher is, how good their lectures are. The teacher's job is not to be cool and give good lectures and be powerful. The teacher's job is to teach. So the only way you can evaluate a teacher is by seeing the quality of their students.
Yeah, this is very powerful. So I can also just check out if there are many people who feel that they got help through this teacher or that they feel better after these teachings or if they were actually better before.
Yeah, yeah, or if they're being manipulated or part of a
Yes.
cult or something. And so basically, when you look at the group around a teacher, it's called a sangha, a teacher
Mm-hmm.
spiritual community. You can tell something about the teacher. If the teacher is very lustful, for instance, you'll see that in their sangha. Like people will be hitting on each other, and there'll be like this vibe of like, general vibe. If the teacher is very prideful, you'll see that that's going to be there in the community. People are going to be very arrogant and proud. So the community, like attracts like. The community is often a good indication of the teacher. Not always, but often. So
Awesome.
my usual recommendation is on the internet. It's very hard to see what a teacher's community is actually like.
Yeah.
It's good to have an in-person, like actual teacher. It could be on the internet, but you have to actually know them, I think. You have to spend some time with them in real life. You have to see what they're like when they're not on a Zoom screen, outside of YouTube, outside of Instagram. Like I've heard all sorts of horror stories. Recently, about 2 years ago, that's not so recent, but a friend visited me from Arizona and she was staying here in our temple. And then we went to another temple for a very famous, important celebration, Shiva Ratri. And there she met somebody who she'd been following on the internet for a very long time. And she was so happy. She was like, "Oh, here's my person. That person is so great on the internet. I'm so happy to finally meet them." And she realized that the person was not at all who they were pretending to be on the internet.
Mm.
They were starting fights, they were really mean. And not only that, they were taking pictures of the ceremony and posting it on the internet and pretending like it was their own function when it was really happening in a different temple. And my friend was right there looking at her phone, seeing this person post, and she was at the event, so she could call her bluff. And that really
Yeah.
and she realized like sometimes internet and real life is different. So we have to be careful. On the internet, we have to be careful. There are great teachers
Yes.
who are giving great offerings, but it's better that we know them for real, I think. So
Yeah.
that
Okay. Okay, that's a great tip. Thank you. Thank you very much.
one more thing, you said, is it
Mhm.
only one or many? I think it's important to note there are different types of gurus. There's
Yeah.
something called Sadguru. Sadguru means true teacher. And I don't mean Sadguru, I mean
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sadguru means a teacher who gives you, in the tantric sense, a teacher who gives you a mantra. That's
Mhm.
the tantric understanding. The role of a teacher is to give you this spiritual quickening impulse, and that comes in the form of a mantra. That teacher will connect you to a particular form, let's say Kali or Shiva or Jesus or something, with that mantra. And maybe you never see that teacher ever again. This is called a Sadguru. But in your life, you'll have many gurus, and they're called upagurus. Upagurus are teachers along the way. Some maybe will teach you one thing, some will teach you another, and they can all be
Yeah.
respected as teachers. But generally, we say we should have one Sadguru, one true teacher who initiates us into spiritual life, and many upagurus.
Oh yeah, yeah, because I have many different ones for different aspects of my life. So, for example, I identified someone who I think is very, very good at mental health topics. So I find that very important to know how the mind works, how the subconscious mind works specifically. I just find it fascinating how our mind as a program is just running in the background. So I learn a lot from that person. On the other hand, I also have teachers who will just say things that seem to remind me of my own truth, and um they will be spiritual truth, but they are more like telling me things that I feel like I have known before, if that makes sense somehow. And this is just beautiful to hear. That I'm not even sure if they consider themselves teachers, but it's just beautiful to listen to them. Yeah.
Plants or animals or trees. Sometimes, there's like stories of like once a sage saw a bird with a fish in its mouth flying in the sky, and that
Mm,
bird was being chased by a gang of crows,
mm,
a murder of crows,
mm.
and then the bird dropped the fish. And all the crows went away. And this guy who was looking at that, he was like, "Oh my God, the bird is my guru. He taught me that if I'm holding on to worldliness, I'll have all these worries. If I'm selfish and I want things, all the black crows of despair
Uh,
and worry. But if I drop my desires, then they'll go away." And so for him, the bird was his guru, like that. There
yes.
only one guru, and the guru is God. And God is speaking through the birds, through the trees. But because, at our stage, it's best to listen through humans. As a human, I'm most likely to learn the teaching not from a tree or from a bird, which I can, of course, but from another human. So whenever
Yeah.
someone says anything, maybe they're a mental health expert, maybe a tantra guru, maybe they're like a martial artist, whatever. Whenever someone teaches anything, we hear in that the voice of the only guru, God, who is speaking through all of these sock puppets, as it were.
It's a sock puppet. That fits. One of my co-hosts of Insanity is a sock puppet, and I called him Jacques.
That's cute.
He's not here with us today, but yeah.
Aw. Well, good we got to shout him out at least.
Yeah, yeah, I had to. He's French, so his name is Jacques, and yeah, he's a
Jacques.
sock puppet, and he's traveling dimensions. That's his spiritual path, because he lost his girlfriend in the washing machine, so now he tries to find her in all the dimensions of the universe.
It happens to the best of us. That
All
washing
right.
machine photo, I wish Jacques all the luck. Like, that's basically spiritual life. We lose our other half, and now the whole of it is a multi-dimensional travel. We
All
reach.
right. Right. You are not just a very good teacher from my perspective. You are also a brilliant content creator. And sometimes I will see videos of yours and well, like saying, for example, you are God there. That's such a bold statement. And you also have other videos that are full of bold statements, which I love and appreciate. Um, Sometimes when I, for example, make content and I'm just a beginner, but I will doubt myself, or I will ask myself, should I really put myself out there? Should I really say this and that, and all the criticism? Like, do you have tips for people who want to do what you are doing?
It's a great question. I'll tell you a story. Once there was a mother lion, and she was chasing a flock of sheep. But she was pregnant, you see. And while she was chasing the flock of sheep, a hunter shot an arrow and killed the poor mother lion. But as she lay dying, she gave birth to the cub. And the poor lion cub, what does it know? It's just there. And all the sheep felt, oh, poor lion cub, So they took the lion cub in. And the
Mhm.
sheep trained the lion cub to be a sheep. And the lion cub, because it grew up amongst sheep, it felt itself to be a sheep. It went bah, bah, bah. It ate grass, it moved around with the flock. One day, another lion came, and that lion came to, eat some sheep. And as he was chasing the flock, he suddenly noticed, oh my God, there's another lion in the flock. And this lion is running from me as if he's a sheep. And this lion, this let's call him the guru lion. The guru lion was stunned. That's crazy. And so late at night, Guru Lion waited till night fell and all the sheep were sleeping. He came into the flock and he grabbed, let's call him the student lion. He grabbed the baby lion and like dragged the student lion. And the student lion said, blah, 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 stop, stop. You're scaring me. Don't eat me. Don't eat me. I'm just a sheep. And the lion dragged him and he said, you're not a sheep. You're a lion. He said, no, I'm a sheep. I eat grass. I bleed. I live with sheep. I'm a sheep. And the lion said, no, no, you are not a sheep. You are a lion. Let me show you. And he brought him to like the edge of a lake and he showed him the lake and he said, look at your face. Now look at my face. And the poor baby looked and he saw, oh yeah, we do have the same thing. Then the big lion put some meat in his mouth and said, now eat this meat. And the lion started eating the meat. And he was like, oh yeah, I like this better actually than grass. And then the big lion said to the baby lion, see, you're not a sheep. You're a lion. Now roar. That's the idea. So my guru showed me my face in the lake. So when I speak, I don't have to rely on concepts or books. I can speak from what I know. I know that I'm not the body. I know that I'm not the mind. And I know that everyone is God. So because I know that, I know I'm a lion. I know everyone else is a lion too. I can roar like a lion. See, I'm convinced. It's not a belief. It's not, I don't have an agenda. It's just the simple, bold truth that I'm willing to, defend with all of my life.
I love that. Oh my God, thank you. That's beautiful.
So roar, Anna, roar like a lion. Yes, express it. What's the worst that can happen? They crucify you. Okay, so what?
Happens to the best of us.
Happens to the best of us. That's good.
Thank you so much. This was very, very interesting. Really great interview. I've learned so much from you today.
Yeah, me too. I've learned so much from you, and I had so much fun. This was so fun.
Me too. We definitely stay in touch. It was such a
and please
pleasure.
feel free. We're in LA. We're just down the road from you. So anytime you want to visit, me and my wife would be more than happy to host you, and it'd be nice to.
I definitely will, and likewise.
Thank you, Anna. It's so fun.
Thank you very much. Have a great day too. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.